One of the questions that I commonly get asked by a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners is about the difference between a contractor and an employee. Would you like to know that difference? Well, you're in the right place because today that's exactly what we're going to do. Stay tuned. Okay, stay tuned again. And welcome to another edition of Supercharged with Emily Momentum Monday. So I hope your week will be off to a great start and you will have just an amazing week ahead of you. So welcome. So happy that you are here today. Well, today's topic is a very important one because for the month of November, I'll be focusing on a new series called Ask the Experts. And asking the experts, I'll be having various guests that will share their expertise. And today I'm going to launch off the series by focusing on a question that I often get asked. So it's like another Q&A podcast today. And the whole idea is, people sometimes want to know the difference between a contractor and an employee. So we're going to dive into what that is. But before we do it, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, comment, like the channel. It's really important that you do that if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on a podcast, to go and write a review. Yay, that's what I need you to do. So thank you. Take that moment. Do that now. All right. And let's get ready to go right into our topic today. So here it is. What is the difference between a contractor and an employee? Inquiring minds want to know. So let's find out. Let us find out. So the first thing we need to know is that a contractor is like, and this is kind of like some of the top level differences. There may be some more other subtle differences, but these are the main ones that you can kind of basically make the distinction from. So a contractor is basically a free agent. They're not really beholden to a company. They usually tend to have some type of contract governing the conditions of how they work with a company and so forth, but they're not an employee in that they're free to work for other companies, they're free to work for themselves, and usually sometimes a contractor does have their own business and they contract their service to someone else. So we hear a lot about government contracting, where the government will actually has all kinds of services that they need and they will procure from a contractor, someone who supplies that service to the government. They're not a government employee, but they provide the service to the government entity or whatever it may be, or corporation or what have you. So, or nonprofit, doesn't really matter. It's someone who is not an official employee. They're not on the books of the business as an employee. And then in a moment, we'll talk about exactly what an employee is. One of the big differences with a contractor is they're responsible for their own taxes. They have to remit their own taxes to their local tax authority or federal tax authority. So that means payroll taxes such as, let me not say payroll taxes, but taxes that would normally be withheld from someone's paycheck, better said. So for example, your Social Security taxes, Medicare withholdings, and FICA and all of that, which is basically like Social Security, and also your tax withholdings. Those three things, those are usually withheld by the employer. But when you're a contractor, you get your gross amount of money, you get your full money, you submit an invoice, you get paid, and no taxes are withheld. But those are your responsibility to remit and report. And then the third thing is there are no real benefits. You're not getting a retirement plan. You're not getting a insurance or things of that nature that most employees tend to get depending on their job. So I hope that sheds a little light on what a contractor is. Now let's talk about some of the tax implications. And again, this is a US based thing. So if you're overseas and listening to this, you may have your own local requirements or local laws that are a little different or similar. So I encourage you to find out what the parallels are or the equivalents are in your local country. But in the US, we have a form called the W-9, which is issued by the Internal Revenue Service, by the IRS. And it's a request to collect information from you: your name, your address, your contact information, and your social security number. Or if you're a company and you're going to provide services to another entity, they'll ask you for your EIN, which is your federal ID number, your employer identification number, which is the same as your federal ID number, which is the equivalent of, if you will, a social security number for your business. So it could be either your EIN or it's your social security number, the SS number. So that W-9, it's basically a request for information. And anyone to whom you provide services could ask you to complete a W-9. It's a very normal thing. If you're selling to a company, they want to have you fill out a W-9. It's very normal. So it's just giving them official authority or permission to have your information. Okay, so that's a W-9. Yes, is that resonating? Is that making sense? I hope so. And let me know if you have any questions at all about anything that I'm sharing today, because I'd love your feedback and your questions if you have any. So now let's talk about the 1099. The 1099 is also a tax form that is issued by your employer or contractor. Now, you're a contractor, right? So it's not going to be your employer, but it's the person that employs your services. So let me clarify: when I say the word employer or your supplier, the person to whom you provide services or you're rendering services, that entity will issue a 1099, which is a form by the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. So if you have to issue a 1099 to someone, you're just going to go to irs.gov, download the form, put in their form 1099, download it, and issue it to the person. Usually, before you issue a 1099, you want to also have them fill out the W-9, because that allows you to have the information now to submit a 1099. So when you as a contractor receive your 1099 from your supplier or the person to whom you've rendered services, then you have to remit that or submit that with your tax returns annually. Now, let me just start off by saying, or say it right now, I am not a CPA, I'm not a certified public accountant, I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not a tax professional, but I am a business person with over 20 years experience, having used these forms for many, many years. So I am speaking to you from the point of view of someone who uses these forms. You don't have to be a CPA or any such thing to be able to understand what I'm sharing with you, because this is basic tax knowledge or basic forms that business people have to fill out. But if you have any questions as far as what makes sense for you or what's appropriate for your business, then you may want to speak with a CPA or someone like that, or a accounting professional, a tax professional, if you want more in-depth understanding for your particular entity, okay? But this is really just basic information. So if you need more depth, I would encourage you to see a CPA if you feel you need to. But most of this information, as I say at this stage, it's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to talk about what is an employee. You can't take anything for granted. Nothing can be taken for granted. But there's some very important distinctions, and that's why we're here talking about it today. All right. Now, but before we go into that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you're on YouTube, follow at Supercharged Coach. Please do that. Take a moment to do that right this moment. Okay. All right. Gotta just remind you to do it. Now, onward. So what is an employee? So number one, three key distinctions. You're beholden to an employer. Many employers do not want you to work for someone else. I remember when I worked in banking many years ago in New York City, when I signed my contract, it said, you cannot work for another bank. You cannot go and work for anybody else while you're working for us. So you're pretty much, as I said, the word is really beholden. I don't know what else to say. You're beholden to that company. Your allegiance is to that entity. And in exchange for that, they're going to do certain things for you. Obviously, they pay you, but then they withhold your taxes and then they remit them to the government on your behalf. So you don't have to worry about that. You get a net pay as opposed to your gross pay because they take out a certain portion remit it to the IRS. And on top of that, the entity pays payroll taxes. And that's a whole other discussion for another day. Let me know if you want to know more about payroll taxes. That's a whole other thing. All right. But the main thing for you to understand is that your employer will withhold your taxes. The third thing is that you tend to receive benefits depending on the company for which you work. You could receive insurance, you could receive life insurance, health insurance, all kinds of benefits, maybe free lunch sometimes, who knows. And generally a pension plan, a 401k, or some form of retirement plan that the company will offer or extend to you, or matching program. So a lot of the reasons why a lot of people want to be an employee is because they have these golden benefits. And it's this thing called golden handcuffs, actually, that tend to shackle people to companies because they really can't afford to do without those benefits. So it depends, on where you are and what you're doing and so forth. But anyhow, those are the main distinctions: the taxes and the benefits, and also your ability to be flexible. Either you work for someone else or you work for that entity. And so now let's talk a little bit about the tax forms as well. So the W-9, the same W-9 which I just mentioned before, is also requested if you're an employee. You still need to fill it out. It's collecting the information, again, your social security number and your contact information, so that it grants permission to your employer to have that information from you so that they can proceed to remit the filing forms that they're required to do. So the W-2 is what many of us are familiar with as employees. You would receive that, or if you're an employee of your own company, you issue a W-2 to yourself. And if you're like an S corp or a corporation, it's maybe a little different depending on what your corporate status is. And if you tune in next week, you're going to have some more detail on that. I'm going to share a little bit about that in a moment. But your W-2 form is the form that the employer issues to you for you to remit with your taxes, that has all of your gross pay plus all that was deducted or withheld and remitted as far as Social Security, Medicare, and also the taxes for your income taxes. And that was issued by the Social Security Administration. So this is what I want you to know. If you're an employer and you have to issue a W-2, that form does not come from the IRS. It comes from the Social Security Administration. That is what you need to know. That is something that a lot of people don't realize. The W-2 form, let me say it one more time, is issued by the Social Security Administration. It's a form that's created, actually you issue it, but it's created on their platform, the Social Security Administration, and it's the SSA business website specifically. So as an employer, that's where that form comes from, that you then send to your employee. And I think they need to have it by, January 31st of the new year. I believe you can double check on that as well. So double check those dates. Okay, so let me share with you, and again, let me know if you have any questions or anything about this topic, because it's a really key one. So let me give you a little summary to kind of just wrap up the comparison so you can see them. So a contractor tends to be a free agent, responsible for their own taxes, no benefits usually. And an employee, they're beholden to the employer, not usually able to work for anyone else. Their taxes are withheld by the employer, and they tend to receive a variety of benefits from their employer. Both entities have to fill out a W-9, which is a request for your information with your social security number and your contact information, or your federal tax ID number if you're a business and you're filling out the W-9. If you're a contractor, you will receive a 1099 that will be issued by the employer, a form from the IRS. And if you are an employee, you'll receive a W-2, which is the summary of your pay that has been paid to you, along with the withdrawals and so forth from your pay. And that form is found on the Social Security Administration website. That is where you get that, from the business site. So those are some of the key distinctions. This is a nice little summary, the differences between a contractor and an employee, and it's very important to understand this. And again, if you have deeper questions that you feel you need a CPA or you want to speak to a tax professional, I encourage you to do that. But next week, I have a nice, wonderful guest coming up that I'm excited to tell you about. Mr. Nico Apfelbaum of Apfelbaum Law, the managing attorney, and he will be our special guest on the podcast. And Nico is an award-winning attorney, and he will be our guest, and he will share about setting up your startup, legal best practices. You do not want to miss this. Should I have an LLC? What's the difference between an LLC and an S Corp? And is the LLC right for me? And as an LLC, do I pay payroll? And the answer is maybe yes or no, depending if you're a single member LLC or not. So you're going to come back next week and ask Nico your questions, get your questions ready. If during the week you have questions regarding legal things about your business, especially startup and best practices, submit them. They might get answered. You never know for next week. So just let me know. Drop them in the comments below, and we'll submit them and see if Nico will respond for you. And I hope that will be the case, and I can share them with him so that he can look at your questions. So I encourage you to make sure to be back here next week for Supercharge with Emily for our special guest. And I'll be having, as I said, a series of guests in my Ask the Expert series, which I am very excited about. So let's see, what else I have to share with you before we go today? I want to share with you that our Supercharge Challenge, the Distraction Elimination for Entrepreneurs Challenge, which was going to be in October, will now be in November 28th and 29th. Please save the date, mark your calendars. It is going to be a very valuable experience. It's just 1 hour for those 2 days, each day, very succinct, very to the point, but very, very meaningful and valuable for you. And it's about how to eliminate the distractions, sharpen your focus, and simplify your priorities. And the first day will be about how to focus. The second day will be about your priorities, because we've got to eliminate these distractions if we're going to achieve our goals. As we get ready to head into 2024, we need to be focused. We need to know what to focus on and what to eliminate that's distracting us. So if you feel that you could benefit from that, please definitely, you're going to sign up. I'll soon have the link for you that you can literally sign up for that. It's a free challenge, as I mentioned. And I'd love to have you join us. And then with that, let me, our next little slide for you is the thought for the day, the Supercharge thought, positive energy thought for the day. And that is show up every single day for yourself. Even when you don't feel like it sometimes, show up for you. Put systems in place to override the emotions, to override the not feeling like it. Because if we run our life on what we feel like or don't feel like, we probably won't do a lot. So show up for yourself every single day. You're worth the time. The world needs what you have to offer. So make it your business, make it your priority to do so. And that message comes to you from courtesy of the Supercharge Club, which I hope you will consider looking into as well. If you need support for your entrepreneurial journey, I invite you to check out the superchargeclub.com, where we supercharge. Okay, I just almost knocked over my lap, but that's all right. That's all right. Okay, where we supercharge. So I want to thank you again, everyone, for being with me today on Momentum Monday. I hope you have an amazing week ahead. And stay supercharged. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, share, all the wonderful things. Write the podcast review. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and continue to tell a friend. And with that, I tell you bye-bye and see you next time.